We have great fans. I want to thank them for being here. So it's a great night for Nebraska.
The Nebraska Democratic Party is not going to have a sort of, burning bush moment where everything gets turned around in one election. That doesn't happen.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Mac McCoy, and welcome to the May 2nd edition of Point Counterpoint Omaha. This is a radio program as well as an online internet program where we have two people from the right. We have today one person from the left, and I'm kind of in the middle. I'm more the journalist here, just trying to make sure that we're all using reliable sources and things like that. Now, Dennis is on his book tour for the Robert F. Kennedy, The Road Not Taken, and he's in, Grand Island, Nebraska today, is that right?
I'm in downtown Grand Island at the moment. I'm in the parking lot of a Casey's general store. I was in North Platte and Ogallala yesterday, had some book talks, met some great people, saw some old friends. I toured the Lincoln County History Museum in North Platte. Anybody's in the area, I'd strongly recommend you go to it. It was really interesting and outstanding.
Yeah, we saw it down in Lincoln, your talk a couple weeks ago. And so anyway, nice to have you on the phone. And Larry, of course, is in Nevada.
It was really interesting and outstanding.
Yeah, we saw it down in Lincoln, your talk a couple weeks ago. And so anyway, Nevada. I'm talk right into that microphone and phone. And Dorsey, welcome to you.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right, so we've got a full day today. We're going to try to do this in two segments to keep everybody on here until no later than 11 a.m. We're recording this at 10 a.m. on Friday when we really do that. And we have several topics here. We have the stereotype of people that we have joining conversation right now in the United States, whether it's on Facebook or X or wherever it is. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the certainty of the economy, which was one of Dennis's topics today, which kind of changed this morning, but we'll figure that out. And then I want to talk about a article that is on what I think is one of the most left biased sites, and I'm going to kind of pick it apart a little bit today and kind of give you an idea of what it looks like, what a article reads like if it's biased, even if it's trying to act like it's in the middle when it's biased. And also at the end of the show, I'm going to talk about I'm not going to talk about the young lady specifically. I'm not going to mention her name or anything like that. But I'm going to talk about there are a lot of people online from the left that are criticizing President of the United States' Easter message. And as a devout Christian, Jesus freak with an attitude, I facilitate Bible studies. I facilitate classes outside of my radio stuff that we do in here. It's really all I do. We're going to talk a little bit about, how do I say this nicely? If you don't know your Bible, if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, then you don't get to decide whether somebody else has or not. And that's biblical. So we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. All right, we're going to start out with you, and one of your was you wanted to talk about opting out of classes. Wasn't that you, or was
Yes.
that Dennis?
No, that was me.
All right, so we'll start out with Dorsey talking about, I think, you tell us what it comes down to.
Okay, so I've seen a couple of things on the television this week where one young lady was accepted into like 10 or 15 Ivy League schools, but she could not go to college because they wouldn't give her her diploma because her parents opted her out of the LGB curriculum.
Okay.
And so they wouldn't give her her diploma because she, of course, supposedly didn't complete the courses necessary in order to graduate from high school. That was one thing.
Okay, wait, so those aren't. You have to take those classes.
In that particular school where she was attending, they made that one of the core things. You know how you have your general studies?
Yeah.
And because her parents opted her out of that, they refused to let her graduate. So, yeah, I didn't think that was very cool
Where
either.
was that at? Do you remember?
Uh,
Here in Nebraska.
no,
Okay.
no. I want to say Wisconsin, but I'm not entirely sure about that.
So they made. Let me help if I understand this.
Mhm.
So this public school district,
Yes,
okay, said if you don't. These are my words. If you don't let your child learn about LGBTQ ? Then they will not graduate from this high school.
correct.
Wow.
So that was one instance. Another instance was, and it's sitting before the Supreme Court right now. They actually have heard or had hearings on it, or
Yeah.
the process that they do in order to. My brain is locked right now, but when I was in school, right in the 60s and 70s, I went to a mixture of military schools, public school, and private school because we moved around. I was raised in the military. And my parents were very, very strict on what they wanted taught to me. There were certain things that they did not want religion taught to me by anybody else, and they did not want sex taught to me by anybody else.
Okay.
And so when I was in school and they were starting to broach those subjects, they allowed parents to opt their children out of those subjects because of the fact they felt that that was something that was family oriented and school systems had no business teaching that philosophy to people's children. And that's the way I raised my children. When my children were in public school here in Omaha and they had the options of sexual education, I opted my children out of those. And I taught them what I felt was appropriate for them to know at the age level that they were supposed to know it at. And we went on with life. Well, there seems to be this thing going on, in my opinion, in the public school system where they basically want to usurp the rights of parents. I've actually talked to some teachers who have said they're not your children. You don't know enough to raise your own children in the way that they need to be raised.
I see.
And so and of course my attitude is, no, these are my children. I pay you to teach my children. And now my children are all grown and gone now.
Right.
But I find it extremely disturbing that seems to be more so a case of people actually feeling that they get the right to teach children what they feel is appropriate and cutting the parents completely out of it.
Would that be under the category of what is it?
No, it's not DEI.
Okay. All right.
And as far as I know, Omaha Public Schools does not teach DEI.
Okay. Now, there's also a question, and we can put this in the same pile. A charter school.
Yes.
Here in Omaha, I think.
Okay.
No? Not here in Omaha?
Concerning what's being heard at the Supreme Court? No,
yeah.
they're not in Omaha.
Okay. So it's a charter school that is a private school, and they want the ability to get taxpayer dollars, even though it's a
Private
school.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always believed, and it irritates me because it's my money that I'm supposed to be providing, and I believe that you should support public education, right? Because there are some people who can't afford going to private schools. But the thing that twinges me on this whole thing is, why should we have a difference, right? If it's truly public, then everybody should be able to be taught the same high-level education, because everybody on the planet knows private schools are academically more advanced
Yes.
than the public schools.
Yes.
Why is that even an issue? That should not be the case at all. There should never be a need for private schools unless you're doing like tech schools or, things like that. But at the same time, if that's the way it's going to be, because as a parent, you've decided that you don't want to teach my children what I want taught, then I shouldn't have to pay into the system. I shouldn't have to pay into the
But
system.
you have to.
You have to. And that's not right because I'm being double taxed. I'm having to pay into a system I'm not participating in, and then I have to pay for a private education. And I think that's incredibly unfair.
Okay, Dennis, I'm going to move to you. We've kind of got two topics here. One is opting out of classes and considering the conversation here is about LGBTQ question mark, and then also private schools getting taxpayer money.
Well, I would say I think the parents should be allowed to have their kids opt out of the classes. I think that's certainly within their rights. So in the case that Dorsey cited earlier today, I'd say give that young lady her diploma and let her go into college. And I would say, too, the Supreme Court's looking at a case where these parents want the right to take their kids out of some classes. I would rule in favor of those parents if I was on the Supreme Court. So in this area, I'm in agreement with Dorsey. So I just want to start off with an area of agreement. Okay. I don't think charter schools should get taxpayer dollars. There's a lot of evidence that a lot of charter schools, not all of them, are inferior to public schools. A lot of them are for profit, and so they have high overhead. The people that run the schools get paid excessive salaries. I mean, my attitude about charter schools is, it's a business, okay? It's just like a business like this Casey's General Store that I'm sitting next to. It's a business like my book selling company, okay? If they can't make it on their own with that taxpayer dollars, that's just too bad. They should figure out a way to raise the money themselves. And there's ample money for charter schools to go to in the private sector to fund their schools. There's a lot of conservative billionaires, the Koch family, the Ricketts family. If these charter schools want to teach a conservative curriculum, go to the conservative billionaires that support their goals and solicit some funds from them. There's ample private funds to fund the charter schools, so they shouldn't have any problem with that taxpayer money. They have ample money to go to.
All right, Larry, it's your turn.
Well, it's a mixed bag. We shouldn't need charter schools.
Correct.
If education was nonpartisan and literally teaching the basics. Our education system has deteriorated so badly with 40, 60, even 80% of a class sometimes not being able to pass basic reading skills or math skills by the time they get to 8th grade. Those are ridiculous numbers for America, of all places, to have. So it wouldn't be necessary if all schools were equal, but they're not.
Correct.
The biggest problem is we've got schools that have absolutely terrible results. And who do we blame? Well, they try to blame the kids, they try to blame the parents, but the fact is the kids aren't learning. And the kids not learning is a problem. Education is a requirement. All right. And just like teaching now, they say, well, one teaching style doesn't fit all children. They all have to be taught individually based on their own skills and their own, talents. Well, that goes really towards schools as well. All schools are not equal, and teachers are not being held responsible when they have a class of 25 students and 18 of them or 15 of them aren't passing the grades. There's a problem, and maybe it's the teaching methods or the teachers that are teaching things other than what they should be. They're teaching maybe about their sexual orientation, or they're teaching maybe about their own personal experiences instead of historical experiences. And I think I love teachers. I think teachers are an absolute necessity, but it has to be good teachers. And they've got to be teachers that put information out for the kids that every other student in every other school is getting. And if a student needs extra help, there's financing for that. There are ways to get that extra help. If you can't find that in the public school system, then your dollars, your tax dollars as well, should go towards the school that's educating your children, that will provide all the necessary education that your children need to be competitive throughout the world.
All right, Dorsey, I'll give you the last word on this. Dennis, if you've got something to add, go ahead
Yeah,
and
I'd
add it now.
I'd like to add this. Oklahoma school district wants to change its curriculum to teach the kids that Joe Biden stole the 2020 election. That's an outrageous waste of taxpayer dollars, and the parents should have the right to withdraw their students when they teach that false history of the 2020 election. So I'll just throw that in there. Another point I'll make is one of the reasons why we have some poor school outcomes is we have inequitable funding of schools. Schools are largely locally funded by property taxes. Let me give you the Washington, D.C. example. D.C. area as an example. Montgomery County, Maryland, very wealthy county, great public schools. They got lots of dough because it's rich people, and the property taxes have a lot more property tax revenues to work with to educate the kids. You go to the District of Columbia, the schools are inferior because they have a much more limited tax base. There's a lot of poor people in DC, so you have lower tax revenues, and so as a consequence, you have inferior outcomes. So you have to equalize the funding of state schools. Some states have funding that equalizes the funding of state schools. Others do not. And so inequitable funding, the ghetto schools are starved for funds. The suburban schools are doing great, and so their kids do better. And I would say about teachers, they are great. They are scandalously underpaid. If we want better teachers, we just have to pay them more. That's my solution.
Okay, now I want to step in for just a second. Dennis, you realize that there are many, many, many things in public school that are taught that some people don't agree with. Whether Biden stole the election or not is not up to us to decide he did or he didn't. If they want to teach that theory was going around during that presidential cycle, why isn't that okay?
Well, they're teaching that theory was correct, that Biden stole the election. It's simply not true at all. It's
But
absolutely
that's your
false.
opinion.
No, that's what I read in a news article. Why should we teach phony history to our kids? That's just not right. It's outrageous. It's a political agenda from the right, and it's completely improper in a public school.
So are you in favor of them tearing down the statues and changing history, how it reads in history books for the Civil War?
Who's doing that?
Oh my goodness! Everybody, they have not everybody. Let me walk that back.
Give me some.
So there are groups, and it's kind of weird that you hadn't seen this, that are actually in the South have been pulling down Confederate soldiers' statues that have been up because they were Confederates, and they've got this great big huge movement going on right now where they are trying to tell people that certain things shouldn't be taught because if it happened today, it would be racist. So they're basically picking and choosing what they want the past to be taught.
Well, Dorsey, you refresh my memory. Thanks for bringing that up.
You bet.
Many years ago, I was in Richmond. On Monument Boulevard in Richmond, they had statues of several Confederates from the Civil War, Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee, I think Stonewall Jackson. Then they put up a statue of Arthur Ashe, a resident of Richmond, Virginia. He was a great tennis player, African-American gentleman. And they took down the statues of the Confederates. I totally disagree with that. They should have kept the statues up of the Confederates in Richmond and other places, and put a sign next to the statues. These are traitors that wanted to maintain people in bondage contrary to law and the Constitution. They should give it its proper historical context. They fought for a very deeply misguided and very immoral cause, and they should put up a sign next to these statues that says that to give its proper historical context.
All right, let me give you another example, if I may, please. First of all, I'll ask you the question. Do you know why Martin Luther King Jr. was at the location he was at when he was assassinated?
There was like a garbage worker strike in Memphis, and he was there to support the strike, is my recollection of it, Mac.
Why was he at the motel he was at?
I have no idea. I don't remember that part.
Okay. History would tell you that he was having an affair on his wife and they were meeting at that motel, and that's why he did not have the security that he needed. Should that be taught?
Well, I guess, I don't know, Mac. I think it should be taught. I mean, we're all flawed human beings. If it's the truth, it should be taught, Mac. If it's propaganda, it shouldn't be taught. I've never seen that angle. I'd like to see your sources on that. I trust you, believe me, but I just think we should see people in their proper context. I mean, Bill Clinton was a very, very good president, but he made a mistake with Monica Lewinsky. So we should look at both factors when we look at Clinton's presidency.
Well, and what I was always told, even when I was in journalism school, was that you couldn't talk about that because it would be considered racist.
Well, if it's in college, I think it's a proper topic because college students could, have the tools and the background to analyze it and put it in its historical context. If you look at the history of this country and probably any other country on the planet, I mean, some of our heroes had some flaws, but otherwise they did some great things. So I think you need to just put it all out there.
All right, last words.
Yeah, so here's what I think on the teacher issue. First of all, I love teachers. Teachers are absolutely one of the most underpaid people groups in this country. And I guess my question would be, why can we not make it a business? Why can we not? Why can we not have teachers in there teaching curriculum and based on test scores and things of that nature? That's how they get paid. Because I can promise you, if you make it lucrative, we're not going to have any problems in the public school system. And I also happen to feel that in a lot of the lower, what you call the ghetto communities, a lot of that, parents need to be more involved. I personally disagree with this, but I have had associates and friends who basically use school as a babysitting system. And every time their kid cuts up, they don't take the teacher's side. They're taking the kid's side. So, teachers are having to manage a lot more stuff than they should have to manage. They shouldn't have to manage behavioral problems. They shouldn't have to manage truancy. I can promise you that I had phone calls twice in my entire school career where the teacher had to call my parents. And when I got home, it was not good. And they were not interested in my side. Their attitude was, your teacher called me today. Why is your teacher calling me at work to tell me that you're cutting up? So, and that accountability does not appear to be in households these days, which I feel is a huge part of the educational process as well.
All right, let's move on now to a conversation about, I think this was your topic, Dennis, about Mike Waltz.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll let you start with that.
Well, there's really not much to say about it. Waltz was kicked upstairs at the United Nations. It was a fallout from the Signalgate scandal. He on an unsecured chat, he sent out information regarding fighter planes are going to drop bombs, where their bombs are going to be, what the targets were. It's clearly sensitive information. If it had been texted to the Houthis ahead of time, it would have put our people in danger. So it was a very reckless thing that Waltz and Hegseth and these other people did. So he got kicked upstairs to the United Nations, I think, in punishment for this ridiculous mistake. And I think Trump's doing it in a way to punish him, because the United Nations post, it's kind of a nothing burger post. The United Nations doesn't do very much, whereas the National Security Advisor is a pretty consequential job. And the downside for the United Nations appointment, it requires Senate confirmation. And so the Senate Democrats are going to grill Waltz about this ridiculous Signalgate scandal that he embarked in. So I think Trump is kind of punishing him through a backdoor way for almost spilling the beans on a sensitive military operation.
All right, Larry, do you have a comment on that?
Well, obviously there were mistakes made in the Signal chat. It wasn't necessarily that it wasn't a common use, or that several administrations have used it, particularly Biden's administration and Trump's, but that the fact that somehow somebody got in there that shouldn't have been there. So if the problem is the fact that it wasn't vetted properly, or the names in it weren't vetted properly, that's really not the problem. The problem was that you had Goldberg on there who was listening to what he indicated was a classified information, and not saying, I don't think I'm supposed to be here, and which is his duty to do. He's in a conversation that he knows he doesn't belong in, yet he's there, and he's editing it, or he's not editing it, he's auditing it and recording it, for posterity. So I really have problems with that. The chat, I don't think there was anything that was literally classified in there, at least not classified that way by the people who make the rules. I think the problem was that Goldberg should have said, you know what, I'm not supposed to be here.
And Goldberg
And
was a journalist, right?
Yes.
He was a journalist from the Atlantic,
Right.
Okay.
and he knew better.
All right, Dorsey,
He
I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, normally Larry and I agree on things, and love you, Larry.
That means she's about to disagree with you.
So, as a person who has worked in security and things of that nature, having to take 8 hours worth of tests every year to be able to keep a certification to say that I can work on secure systems. Yeah, you're right on everything that you just said. However, that should not have ever been a conversation that it should have ever taken place on that platform. When you start talking about stuff like that, you need to be sitting in a room, and you can't leave anything in writing like that. And, I was the first one to say, oh, yeah, he shouldn't have done that. And you're right. The reporter should have gotten off. He should have said, hey, I'm here. If he was a true patriot, I'm here. I don't know how I got on your list, but I am. You need to check your list and let me know. I'm going to delete this, and I'm reporting that I was involved in this, because that's what journalists should do, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But he should have helped them remediate that situation. And if he had been in a situation of where it was clearance controlled, he by law would have had to have done exactly what I just said. Because anything other than that, it would have made him complicit as well. Right? So
that's absolutely true.
Right. So I have had 2 oopses of major consequence in my career. And I should have been fired. Absolutely. It was a stupid thing to do. I wasn't thinking. It caused problems. I should have been fired. But I had the mercy and grace of my boss, who said, yeah, well, you know what? We're not going to let you do this for a while. We're going to put you someplace else until you get schooled up and figure out how you did it, and you don't do it again. And I believe that's what they're doing with Mr. Waltz. And I personally agree with it. I don't think he should have been. I mean, if it was real world and you were really just trying to be an idiot and be mean-spirited, he should have been fired. He absolutely should have been fired, because it doesn't make any difference what was in the chat. The fact of the matter is there was a person who wasn't supposed to be in there, and that all should have been sussed out before they even started using that technology. So that's where I sit with that.
All right.
Dorsey, I agree with you a lot, and in this, I agree with you. I personally have held several security clearances. Back when Reagan was president and coming to Des Moines often, because Gary Kirk was his finance manager here.
Right.
I had the opportunity to meet and work with the president, or I met the president and worked with his security teams. And yeah, I agree. I mean, there are certain things you don't talk about. There weren't any ways, means, methods, or sources that were really discussed in that.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I get it.
Yeah. So, and the fact that the platform up to that point had been used by both the last 2 administrations. So Would I have made different choices myself? Yeah, probably. So I have to agree with you. Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily a good choice, especially with the information they were doing, which was close to real time, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it was way overblown. And I do agree that however that name got on there and wasn't vetted properly, that was Waltz.
Yeah, that
And,
was.
you know, he has to take responsibility for that. If this demotion helps him get his kit together,
Right.
wonderful.
Okay. I'm going to kind of extend this conversation with this topic, but I'm going to do it from a different angle.
And we don't forget about Dennis too, because we haven't heard from him yet.
We haven't heard from him on this?
No.
Oh,
No.
Dennis, you go
Well,
first. I'm sorry.
Well, I started the conversation. I don't have much to add. I agree with Larry and Dorsey that Waltz made a big mistake, and I would add that Don Bacon said that what he transmitted via signal was classified. Don Bacon's a retired Air Force general, and so he would know something about classified information. But I'd agree with Larry and Dorsey that Waltz made a mistake, and this move to the UN is kind of a bit of a punishment for him. And that's all I have really to say about it. There's not much to add. You guys have done a nice job of describing the issues, both sides of the coin.
All right, so this conversation that I'm going to start right now is probably more aimed between Dennis and I, but I want your opinions, okay? I believe there are several quote-unquote news sites out there which are so biased that they need to be considered the voice of the left or the voice of the right. I want to give you an example here. One of my least favorites is called The Hill, Hill.
I know it.
Here is the headline for this morning's Hill. GOP senators wonder about Hegseth's future amid Trump administration turmoil.
Okay.
So GOP senators, that's the first. They, in this headline, they're saying, well, they're wondering about Hegseth's future amid Trump administration turmoil. Now, I'm going to read you part of the story, and I want to show you how misleading these headlines are. So we're looking for the content of the Republicans, and we're looking for where Hegseth, these senators thought that Hegseth was out of line. Senate Republicans are standing by embattled Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, but they are privately wondering how much time he has left atop the Pentagon amid ongoing turmoil with the Trump administration, which resulted in the replacement of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. What senators? Any names there? Nope. No states, no names. So they're saying they want us to believe that Republicans are going against what Pete Hegseth is, and perhaps he doesn't have much time left on top of the Pentagon.
Right.
Absolutely no validity. Who are the senators? Where do they get this idea that Pete Hegseth is hasn't got much time left at the top of the Pentagon? My point is, this isn't news.
That's
this
true.
is opinion.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
they want you to think it's news. They want somebody on the left to say, well, even GOP senators are wondering if he's going to be around that long.
Right.
No, we have no proof. And I can continue to read you the article, or you can go find it. They don't mention any
I know.
Republican senators.
I know. So, Dennis, did you want to?
Yeah, here's what I'm
There you go.
coming at a different angle than you, Mac. I understand your reservations about the anonymous sources, and I share those reservations. But these sources are anonymous because these Republican senators are cowards.
Okay,
If
but then they
some-
shouldn't print the story. They have no validity
Well,
on the story.
Well, these Republican senators should go on the record if they have concerns about Hegseth.
Right, and
I mean,
since
they're all-
they didn't, then the story should not have been printed.
Well, I don't know what to say, Mac.
Well, it's
about
opinion. It's not news.
that. Well, I just want to go at the angle these Republican senators are cowards. If they have problems with Hegseth, they should go on the record and express those opinions. They shouldn't be anonymous, but they're afraid of Trump's base. They're afraid that they're afraid that Trump will post a mean tweet about them. They need to like grow a pair and go on the record if they got some problems with it. I mean, here's the deal. One of my themes on the page is some Republicans are dissenting from some of Trump's policies. And I think that's a very important thing for the Trump administration to listen to. These guys are the canaries in the coal mine. Joe Biden ignored Democrats who thought he was spending too much money, it would cause too much inflation. The results were not good for Biden. When Bush 43 was president, Chuck Hagel was opposed to the Iraq War, but the Republicans canceled Hagel and chased him out of the party. Once again, the results were disastrous. I think a president should listen to members of his own party who have reservations and opposition to his policies and make a course correction to avoid a bad result and bad outcome.
And I absolutely agree with you about that. I think the point that Mac is trying to make, and I agree with this as well. However, I do understand the anonymous source thing that journalists have. Okay, I get that, and and not revealing sources and all that stuff. I understand in theory that's how a lot of stuff gets reported without people losing their lives and income and all this and all this. I think, and this was something that I put in the list in the email, I personally struggle having conversations with people on the other side of the aisle with what everyone can agree to being a neutral news source, right? So we're having this conversation about the numbers that came out a couple of days ago about the economy collapsing a little bit, right? It was 0.2% or something. And there's 4 indicators that they use to come up with the number. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact term right now. So when I posted on the site that, yeah, one of the reasons why it went down was because there's less government spending, and that should be a good thing, right? You shouldn't be spending money you shouldn't have. I was immediately told that that logic was not correct. So then I went to my sources and put the articles in there because I've kind of been lazy about not proving what I believe in. Shame on me. And the response was the Heritage Foundation. You really believe them? And I'm like, okay, well, what source do you feel is acceptable that I can use for my point of view? Because honestly, from the depths of my soul, I do not trust anything that mainstream news sources say anymore. They have lied to us for the last 4 years plus. They have, said, don't believe your lying eyes, and on so many issues. And now the COVID stuff is coming out, and it's just a hot mess. So, I was hoping that would be something that we could talk about on what both sides agree is a neutral news source, because now the people on the other side are saying that they don't believe the government stuff because they say Trump is behind the scenes scrubbing information off the websites. So you can't even go to the government sites anymore to talk to people on the other side. So I just want a solution. So
Larry, you want to chime in on this?
Yeah, I'm sure like Dorsey, like you, like yeah, the other
all
guy.
good people.
Yeah,
yeah, you can call me. That's fine.
we try to get multiple news sources and look at both, and then decide which is which. The article that you suggested is the GOP having problems. That should be listed as an opinion. If you look over on the left of the Hill page, they've got a column there that says just in. And when they do opinions, that's at the head of it. It says opinion, lessons from 9/11 can help American digitize border security. Opinion, with Trump's tariffs in place, the perfect opportunity. And the other things are supposedly supposed to be news. And of course, they're not, depending on the bias or to one direction or the other, either direction. of the person writing the story. Words mean something. You look at polls, for example. Honest polls are almost an unheard of thing because polls can be skewed and affected by so many biases simply by the words you use. Opinion articles like this should have been listed as an opinion because they don't have the facts. All they've got is innuendo and third-person stories. So our media, sadly, has lost almost all credibility.
Yeah.
Well, I always tell the story that my freshman class of journalism at the University of Nebraska, one day we had a surprise visitor. And the reason it was not announced because the surprise visitor was Walter Cronkite. And if they had announced he was coming to campus, you could imagine the what would have happened. All good things. But anyway, one of the things that Walter Cronkite taught us, you have to have 3 unassociated sources before you ever print or say or whatever your job in journalism is. That is non-existent.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I really don't. And it's frustrating.
Yeah. All right, Dennis, you wanted to talk about something with stereotypes?
Yeah, I do. Here's the thing, Mac. It's this. I've talked about this before with you guys both off and online, and I've said this more than once. The horse may be dead, but I think most Democrats love America. They want what's best for America. I think most Republicans love America, want what's best for America. We just have a different way of getting there. But sometimes online, it kind of irritates me. I have Democratic friends comparing Trump to Hitler. It's just ridiculous. And then I see Republicans claiming that Democrats want America to fail because they hate Trump so much. My point is these people that post crazy stuff like that are just a minority. I mean, most people are good and want what's right. I mean, that's all. It's not a big point. It's not a big burr in my saddle, but I just think that some on the left unfairly stereotype conservatives. If they sat down and talked to Larry and Mac and Dorsey, they would like and respect you guys if they didn't agree with you. And I think some of your conservative friends, if they sat down and talked to me for a while, they would probably like and respect me and think, well, maybe this guy's wrong. Maybe he's misguided, but he's a hell of a nice guy, and I have a beverage with him. And that's the way it should be. That's all really the point I want to make.
Well, and I would say this, and it's kind of in everybody's corner on this comment. I don't worry about Dorsey or Larry or even Dennis. I love Dennis. I don't worry about those of us that are informed.
Right.
Those type of headlines are picked up by uninformed people who don't know how to look at things logically with common sense. They happen to have one lean or the other, and so they make it
gospel.
Yeah. And that's what social media has done with us, to be honest with you.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Dennis, I'm the one most of the time that is the one that brings up, they need Trump to fail in order to be successful. And I own that. I base that on the fact that most politicians, both sides, by the way, most politicians do want what's best for America, but their survival comes first.
Right.
It's human nature. The survival is these guys. There shouldn't be professional politicians. All right. There should be people who care and people who move in and out of government and a flow of new faces, fresh ideas. But too many of them, and one of my personal favorites, Chuck Grassley, is a personal friend of mine. I lunch with him quite often. He's been there forever, and he has a certain way of doing things. But for him, it's also survival. Like every other most other politicians, the survival instinct kicks in. And I think it's when Biden was in, Republicans couldn't say good things about Biden because if he did well and his party rewarded him with support in the Senate and the House, they might not have a job. And I think a lot of it just basically comes down to human instinct. We want to survive. We want to continue in our jobs. And unfortunately, that comes before the good of the country for many people.
All right, let me add one thing to this, and then I'll get to my I'll let you guys have the final word. Then I've got a little comment I want to make. Senate. This is the headline: Senate Democrats lament mischance after tariff vote went poorly. Here at least is an example coming from someone who said, if the Democrats had done what the Democrats said they were going to do, we wouldn't have all these tariffs lamenting over our country right now. The Democrats missed the vote. They didn't have enough people. So all the noise about tariffs cannot be proven that the Democrats don't like them, because they didn't get the votes to say no.
Well, let me make a point on that. Here's the context: is the vote was 49-49 to repeal some of the Trump tariffs, and for whatever reason, Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island missed the vote, and he got a lot of hell for it. But you still had 49 Democrats. I guess there's 47 Democrats in the Senate, correction, that are on record as opposed to the tariffs. So the Democrats do oppose the tariffs. I think their opposition to it is sincere and a reasonable belief. The big beef was with Whitehouse, but the thing is if Sheldon Whitehouse had been there, it would have passed 50-49, but it's not going to pass in the House. So it's all symbolic. It's much ado about nothing.
Okay. Hey, I wanted to give you you guys a little heads up on the tariff situation, right? So, and this is from Mexico in their news with their reporting. And they're starting to become very, very bitter about this. So in Mexico, they have a very strong relationship with China. They were building cars for China. China went in, they put in the infrastructure, they brought everything in, and they actually make it illegal that if you are a permanent resident or a visa holder, you cannot buy a car in the United States and drive it down there as your personal vehicle. They check the VIN numbers, and if the car was not made in Mexico, Japan, or China, you cannot own that car and have visa status in Mexico. Okay, that's their law. Cool, fine, I'm good with that. But now it's been discovered and it's being reported that China went ahead and put in all of that infrastructure and everything, and now they're bringing in Chinese workers and replacing the Mexicans and paying them a lower rate.
Yeah.
So they basically have Chinese run Chinese labor in their country, and they've thrown out literally thousands of Mexicans who cannot work now because the quote costs too much. So, I just wanted to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, Dorsey, post that on the Counterpoint page. I'd like to see the article. It's
okay.
I'm pretty interested in Mexico because I spend a couple months there every winter, and pay in Mexico is scandalously low. I've talked to Mexicans about it. So
it is. It absolutely
what the heck's
is
going on. So if you could post something on that, I'd love to see it. I probably won't get to it until later in the day. I got a very busy calendar, but I'd like to take a look at it if it's not too much trouble. Thank you.
Not at all. Not at all. But I wanted to let you know that, China is being really nefarious in a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay.
I mean, they are nefarious. They're commies. I don't like commies. How's that, guys?
I was practicing my Christianity, dude.
We knew that.
I hate commies, so there you go.
Speaking of Christianity, I'd like to close this program out with something, and I want to be real gentle here. First of all, I've eliminated all this from, this person eliminated all these comments from the site, and I'm not going to bring up this person's name because this isn't about calling somebody out, okay? Here's my point. Nobody knows everything about Christianity and the Bible and all that. Nobody knows everything. I don't care who you think you are. Not even Billy Graham knew everything about everything. However, there's some people who go to church and therefore they call themselves a Christian, and that's okay with me. Some people don't go to church and they call themselves a Christian. That's okay with me. Here's what's not okay with me. This person put online, I had posted President Trump's Easter message, okay? Not the one that supposedly he put on that was so horrible. This was his 2.5-minute video on what Easter means to our country. And this person came back and said, and I can't say one of the words, so I'll supplement it with the word I can use, bull feces.
Okay.
This guy doesn't know anything about Christianity. If he did, he'd shut up. Well, okay, young lady who posted this, you don't know anything about Christianity because you would never say that. A Christian would never come back and say publicly the things you said in there. I am certainly no expert on the Bible, but I read it every day. And I teach or facilitate Bible classes. I have 5 each week. Does that make me an expert? No. But it does make me more obedient as a Christian than some lady says, this guy's no Christian and he shouldn't be talking about this. Now, when I went back and said online, oh, do you have a relationship with Jesus? Are you a Christian? I got blocked. So, and here's an example like with Dennis. I don't believe everything Dennis says is gospel or truth, but he has a very good basis of opinion.
Right.
And I respect that opinion.
Right.
But I guess I've already said my point. I don't want to keep going on. But if you're going to say that you don't think somebody's being a Christian and you're not doing what it takes to be a Christian, it kind of falls apart, dude. You know?
It does.
Yeah. And Christians know, and we do this, we're hypocrites, but we know you don't judge other people.
Yeah. I work on that daily.
Yeah. It's something we all have to work on. So, all right. Anybody got any last things? Otherwise, we'll wrap up this week's show. Yeah. Dorsey, you go ahead.
No, I just, I was really happy about the jobs report this morning. That was wonderful news. And the market's back up.
Yep.
And I'm glad to see that Trump is taking accountability and making sure that people are held accountable for the mistakes that they make. I appreciate the fact that he showed the gentleman mercy and grace, Mr. Waltz. But I'm glad to see that he did what he was supposed to do. He took care of business and made sure that that person was held accountable. And because, you know, one of the things that I struggle with online a lot is people say that, well, you're going to back him no matter what because he's your guy.
Not true.
And I'm like, no, I will be the first one to say he's an idiot if he's an idiot. And I have been chastised for that. So, you know, it's just nice to see that he's he's being responsible and doing what he's supposed to do, even if it might embarrass him.
All right, we're running out of time here.
Sorry.
I'll give you 30 seconds, Larry.
Personally, I love the show today. For me, the thing about the Trump administration is they're very transparent. When a mistake is made, everybody knows it. They don't run away from it. Everybody knows it. They look into it. They give it thought and make a thoughtful decision coming out of it. So
Dennis,
I appreciate that.
Dennis, you get the final word today.
Well, the economy is flashing conflicting signals. There's bad news coming out of the economy. There's good news coming out of the economy. This trade war is a riverboat gamble. And I think it's a very risky scheme, and it could likely fail. I hope it works out, but I just don't share your confidence, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to be wrong at the end of the day, but it's a heck of a gamble. I'm not very confident it's going to work out, but we shall see, my friends.
All right, I want to thank all of you guys on the show today, and we'll be back next Friday at 10 a.m. for that week's version of Point Counterpoint Omaha. If you want to search for these shows on YouTube, it's Point Counterpoint Omaha. And thanks to our worldwide sponsor, Divine Truth Christian. Anything you need, you can get it from them.
Where you'll find more.